Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Steve Philp and I'm your host for today's webinar and the Partnership Director here at Portugal Pathways. Today's webinar, Navigating Health and Integration for Expats in Portugal, is designed to provide essential insights and expert advice on settling into life in Portugal. We'll be covering a wide range of topics today about integration, well-being, healthcare provision and adapting to Portuguese healthcare system. We'll be offering advice and support on finding the right location that fits with your lifestyle and your objectives. And we'll also be exploring and navigating language and other relocating challenges. Before we sort of dive in, I just want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and that there'll be a link sent to you along with a summary of key points within the next sort of 24 hours. We will have a Q&A session towards the end, so please feel free to leave your questions and your comments as we go through the webinar today. If we don't get to all of the questions in terms of answering those questions, our team at Portugal Pathways will be reaching out afterwards to arrange sort of follow-ups and answer those questions and introductions to the relevant experts. So sort of talking of obviously experts, I'm really pleased to introduce you to today's panelists. Firstly, we have Colleen Showalter, and Colleen is the founder of Portugal the Place, and they are a relocation specialist with extensive experience helping expats settle in Portugal, as well as their research in the right locations to align with people's goals and aspirations. Joining Colleen, we have Pedro Vigas. Pedro is the manager at MFO Living. They specialize in supporting affluent families with life and integration into Portugal. Finally, joining Pedro and sitting alongside Pedro in his offices in Lisbon is our Portugal Pathways chairman, Paul Stannard. So Paul is the chairman and founder of Portugal Pathways and the Portugal Investment Owners Club, which we'll be hearing about a little bit later on in the webinar. The Portugal Owners Club provides solutions for tax, golden visa, residency by investment, luxury real estate, exclusive experiences through the P Club, and support with healthcare, offering a soft landing for expats embarking on a life and investment in Portugal. So welcome to all of our panelists. The first sort of discussion point we're going to be talking about today is all around sort of healthcare and health insurance options. So relocating to a new country like Portugal, we know can be stressful if you don't really have the right support around you to fully understand obviously how to integrate into the country and ultimately start thinking like you are indeed Portuguese. Colleen, as someone who has been through this personally, what are the common things that you see and the sort of traps that people sometimes fall into?
Well, that's a really important question, Steve. And I think for most people, they feel that they can bite off more than they can chew, that they should have so many things figured out right away. It's a rush to the finish line, so to speak, that you have to know everything before you make decisions. You have to navigate all the systems well and somehow have a sense of independence, even though you are not ready or aware of all the cultural differences and perhaps the language challenges. So from the traps that I see is a lot of people focus on, for example, trying to learn Portuguese before they've ever been to Portugal or lived in Portugal. And it's a very difficult language to learn if you don't hear it every day. If it's not something you're using every day, you work in the app, you work really hard, but then if you're not using it, it just doesn't always connect. And so I think giving yourself a break when you're starting a process of relocating abroad, making a big move from a totally different culture, is creating a plan that's realistic, and then also being aware that the plan will go out the window and can change, and be prepared for all of the things that you're not even going to be aware are going to happen. So it's really the pressure people put on themselves to do it in this quote unquote right way. They read a lot on a lot of forums that it must be done a certain way. And actually, there's a variety of ways you can move abroad, and you should be looking at what best fits yourself and your family.
That's really good. Thank you, Colleen. That's really helpful. Pedro, as someone who has traveled and lived in different parts of the world and looked after hundreds of Portuguese families and their wealth, what else would you add to what Colleen has already said?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello to everybody, first of all. I would say I totally agree with Colleen. And I would say that planification is key, meaning that one has certain expectations when moving abroad. We are specialized in welcoming people in Portugal, as you know. And there is this whole, let's say, ecosystems of different factors that you have to manage in order to get a smooth landing. So I would say that one has to be well aware of what is expecting from Portugal as destination country, and most of all, talk with somebody that is in the country and probably might help him better, and not following so much information, etc., that we have today, and that sometimes can lead to some misunderstandings.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pedro. And Paul, for someone who is sort of, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, more 1 foot in nowadays, how would you sort of like summarize and add any final points to what Pedro and Colleen said here?
I think, just from our own inbox at Portugal Pathways, many people come in with like, I need to know how to do just tell me how to do a D7, or how to do a golden visa, or just send me properties, or they come with like tasks. It's all task driven, and we, Steve, from your own, we try to take people back. And there's some people, they're wedded to it, and it takes a little bit of perseverance to actually say, hold on a minute, what are you trying to achieve here? Work back from what are the life goals you want to achieve? What kind of people do you want to be around? Do it that way round, rather than I've researched this, so I know I want a D7, or I want this, or I want that. Engage with a partner that's walked this walk and understands these processes, but it's not the process that will create the happiness. It's starting from where do you want to be, and that's the point that I'd make.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. Obviously we see dozens and dozens of people every day, coming onto our website and asking us sort of direct questions that maybe haven't considered the lifestyle changes that obviously relocating to Portugal is, the positive lifestyle changes that relocating to Portugal is going to provide. And that you do need to start from that point. So again, thank you guys for that insight. I'd like to now talk about health and life. As there is sort of an old saying that wealth has no value without health. And this could be one of the major priorities for people coming into Portugal. Understanding the state healthcare system, how it works alongside private care and insurance options that obviously people want to understand. Pedro, could you share your sort of unique experience and what your organisation provides for those affluent families when it comes to healthcare provision and sort of recommendations?
Yeah, sure. So very specifically, we have one of the services that we have an insurance broker, and some of us in the family office come from insurance companies. So as you might know, we are very used to this kind of problems and choosing the best suit, let's say, for one's needs. We also have 3 exclusive doctors inside the family office that work as general practitioners. So they are like a private family doctor, which is something that in Portugal it's very important, and there is a lack in the market in this sense. I would say in general terms that the public system works very well if you are in an urgency, if you have a severe accident or a huge disease or something sudden. Things in the public service work quite well indeed. But if you have a problem, like imagine you got to do a surgery to your knee because you were playing something and it went wrong, you can be on a queue or on a list for months until you get the surgery in the public system. That's where the private health insurance jumps in and allows you to have a complete treatment in an available time, let's say, in the right time, and not having you waiting until who knows what. I would just like to give an example. During the pandemic, these 3 doctors were online almost all day because, as you might consider, everybody that came from abroad and was caught in the middle of the storm didn't know where to go, what to do, how they get treated, or what should they do, even in terms of advice, etc., from the National Health Service, because everything was in Portuguese at the beginning. So there's always a huge advantage, in my opinion, to have a link in the country that knows your track record and may, let's say, drive you to the right path.
Absolutely. Pedro, you mentioned there about expats and the public sort of healthcare system. Do you find that expats often sort of choose the private healthcare over the public system? And you mentioned obviously the swiftness of being seen, but what are the other sort of key sort of deciding factors here?
I would say that the private hospitals are in better shape than the public ones, okay, depending on the place where you are. But most of the people is already used to have his own private insurance, private health insurance. Okay, so if one comes from the US, for instance, it's the first thing they ask, and even in Europe, it's also common, because people have this concern once they are moving to another country that they don't know, they don't have a background, they don't know where the safe harbor is. So we always try to put them in the right track, okay, and helping them doing the best choices. Of course, that you can go only for the public service, okay, and that's easy to do. You just have to apply, and it's done after finishing your relocation process or during your relocation process. But for you to have an idea, half of the Portuguese population by now has private health insurance. So I think that answers to the question that everybody is moving a little bit also to the private sector due to the huge charge over the public sector in day-to-day needs, let's say.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pedro. Colleen, obviously as an expat who's lived over in Portugal for a number of years, what are your sort of thoughts and experiences in terms of the sort of private and public system?
Well, it's very clearly a system that for Americans is quite different because the safety net of having a public system just doesn't exist. So it's something that we navigate and start to have to become accustomed to. You're required to have private health insurance when you're applying for the visa. So this is something that you must have as part of your visa application. So when folks are looking for it and when we're working with our clients that are talking to us about it, a lot of them are shocked when they get a quote that it doesn't include things like ambulances or a heart attack or something like that, because they're not accustomed to the fact that there's a public system. If you have an accident, to Pedro's point, if you have a massive heart attack, they're not going to go, oh, let's see what card they have and which system they're going to drive you to. They're going to take you to the closest hospital and you're going to get treated. And then your private doctors and all of that will start to kick in. That's a big concept for folks that are coming from systems that aren't like that. The other thing that I think has to be mentioned when it comes to healthcare is prescriptions, and the fact that you don't have prescription coverage in your insurance policies. You know, in the States, you've got policies that have varying levels of copays and price deductions, and here that just doesn't exist. So it is a bit of a change. You really do have to have trust fall that the insurance you purchased actually covers something, because for us, it feels like there's a lot of things that aren't listed. But I agree. The private system is really efficient. I was actually just an appointment this morning and was in a beautiful new private clinic in Loria with English speaking doctors. That is a benefit of the private system as well. The language is definitely, you feel like you have more access to the language if you're struggling with the Portuguese. And then, you know, you're in a place where they have the state-of-the-art equipment. You feel very confident in the tools that they have and the recommendations they make. So overall, I've really been pleasantly surprised personally. And then our clients are really starting to see how advanced in many cases Portugal is, especially like dentistry, right? Like it's crazy how much better the dentistry is in Portugal than it is in the United States.
Just before you move on from that, Cleve, what about cost of the healthcare? I mean, in comparison with a place like US, as you were talking about.
Well, that's almost terrifying to talk about because it's so, like, it's crazy. Every single one of us in the United States, except for the ultra 1% or above, could be wiped out with a catastrophic illness. Even if you have private health care, if it's provided through your employer, it doesn't matter. There is no safety net. And many of us have lived in constant anxiety and fear that thing, the big C word or something else will happen. And then where will you be? And I feel like the cost comparison is very difficult to make because here, even if it costs something to get a procedure done, you know, if it's complicated or you end up in the ICU or something like that, you're not going to end up with $1 million bill after being in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. There are some comparable costs, but in general, it's substantially lower for most folks, for the insurance, for the cost. Then the prescriptions are incomparable. The only thing on healthcare that I've found more expensive personally are supplements and vitamins. Things that are not under the system, those are actually more expensive here in some cases than what I was paying for. And I'm assuming that has to do with supply and demand and the buying power of those. But overall, it's one of the reasons I tell people they cannot take their taxes and apples what they pay, because we don't have this built in the United States. So you can't be looking at your tax burden the same in both countries because you actually receive something else.
Good point. Absolutely good point. Before we move on from this topic, Paul, is there anything that you would like to add over and above?
Yeah, I mean, you know, talking about apples for apples, I think it's really good point. And not just across healthcare. I was with a group of American families yesterday, and basically one guy, he'd had 3 procedures, and he said if I was in America, I'd be panicking, I'd be frightened of being in there. Don't take me in there because I'd be worried about what the cost is. You know, you shouldn't be in fear of the financial life when you're going through pain and misery. And of course, it's hard to comprehend for people.
It's no joke, Paul. I mean, I have had friends with open wounds that took an Uber instead of calling an ambulance.
Yeah, no, a lot of dialogue was going on yesterday.
Yeah, they don't want to do it. But what about for British folks? The other thing I'm hearing from our clients from the UK is that they're finding the Portuguese system easier to navigate than what's going on with the national health system.
Yeah. I mean, the NHS is a sacred cow in the UK. But the problem is, you know, COVID sort of broke it, and, you know, trying to get an appointment in the UK, it's gradually starting to get a bit better, but it's been far too long. But the other thing I just wanted to get across on this particular point, the guy yesterday was saying he's had 3 procedures and he didn't worry about any one of them. Any one of those procedures would have been tens of thousands of dollars, and he said he ended up spending hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
And the other point he made, back to that cost comparison, he said, you know, my property tax in America was 10,000. He said it's 500 euros in Portugal. So you can't compare these things. The cost of living element of what Portugal brings is completely different. It's completely different.
But the tax numbers, when you see the tax numbers banted about online and people talk about, oh my gosh, it's almost 50% of your income, you know, it's very difficult for people to see all these other areas that offset some of the tax and that it's a progressive tax. There's so many things, but you're right. I paid $12,000 a year in property tax where I lived in the States, and here it's 300 and I don't know how much it is because it's a thing.
Yeah.
So it's what I try to talk with my clients about is when you make a budget, you're going to struggle to understand that some of the hidden taxes and fees that the US loves to slide in, you don't have here. It's actually much cleaner. You kind of know what you've got, and you complain and you drink coffee and you complain about it, but you pay it. Whereas in the States, they get you coming and going. One state will have sales tax, another one has income tax, another one has this. It's much more complicated in layers than it is in Portugal in many ways.
There is another point that I would like to add. I agree with all that has been said, but there is one issue. Sometimes the insurance for the visa is not the ideal coverage for living here. Okay, so sometimes it's only 30,000 euros of capital, and in the end, when you really settled in Portugal, that will not be enough. Okay, so a lot of people thinks that okay, I have already the insurance because I had to apply for the visa. Sometimes they go for the quicker solution, and that might not be enough, or for sure that it's not enough for a day-to-day life in Portugal.
Oh, and of course, yeah, you're right. They have to renew too at 2 years, and they have to show that they have insurance. So it's
also my advice is to do it as soon as possible once you take the decision, because in Portuguese insurances there is always, in the health of course, there is always a grace period. So it's a nice thing to have if you overcome the grace period when you are still in the process of moving, etc. So that when you arrive here, that period is already gone.
That's a great.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I'm just conscious of the time. We've got lots of sort of topics to get through, but I just want to sort of thank you for those insights and just let our audience know that obviously looking after health in a new country can't be taken lightly. But if any of the audience would like further assistance with the topic of health provision, please contact us directly at portugalpathways.io. It's our website. One of our team will obviously put that link in the chat if they haven't done so already. So we're just going to move on now to obviously another sort of topic that's sort of obviously close to everybody's heart, moving. So moving itself, relocating, and looking at where you're going to live in Portugal, choosing the right location, pondering it all is, you know, a major part in anybody's relocation in from the US to Portugal or wherever it may be. Obviously, it's more important, if not more important, than the home you choose itself. So it's more important where you live than potentially what you live in. But obviously, I would like to get the panelists' sort of point of view on that. So again, obviously, Colleen, that's something that you've got a lot of experience in. Can we sort of start with you in terms of the place to live?
Well, it's such an interesting question because we see this online all the time. People just drop in a chat in some group. Where should I move to? Where should I live? It's like, we don't know you. We don't know what you like. We don't know what you appreciate. And so it's a very personal decision based on a variety of factors. But there's one key piece that you need to keep in mind is that Portugal, though it's a small country and it's a place that I'm so proud to call home, it's the size of the state of Indiana. And with such a small country, it still has a huge variety of cultural differences, opportunities, lifestyle. So it's not like you can just plunk down in Portugal and be like, I'm here and I get the same experience. So that's what makes it so wonderful. But when people are looking and considering, I often talk about this from what do you want your life to be like a year after you've already moved, you've gone through all the excitement, you've ordered that pizza online and got the right order, you've figured stuff out, right? What do you want your life to be like then? Because a lot of folks are retiring. They've never lived without something to do. They don't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, then the place you land could definitely be at odds with what works for you. So number one is, what do you do? What makes you thrive? Do you love to have sound and activity and people around you? Are you driven by your budget? Do you have long-term healthcare concerns? Should you be closer to major medical centers? Or do you have other concerns like children in school, children that are looking to perhaps have an international school experience as opposed to a local school? There are so many factors to take in. And if you've never been to Portugal before, and I will say this as a true believer in the beauty that Portugal has, it doesn't show well online. It's kind of two-dimensional. like France and Italy and stuff, it's very like, wow, you get it. People made movies about it, but it's hard to get a feel for what Portugal is until you're here. So if you're planning to move to Portugal, if in any way you can get yourself set up to come and do a experience, scout, try to avoid the tourist areas and really dig in with a specialist like us, or create an itinerary that's an intentional experience to see the good and the bad. No place is perfect, and you don't want your expectations to be off-centered from what the reality will be when you live here.
Brilliant. Actually, thank you. Pedro and Paul, have you got anything to add? Start with you, Pedro.
Yeah, totally agree with Colin. In fact, it's amazing how in 100 kilometers, the landscape, the people, and even the climate can change so much. Exactly. I come from the interior of Portugal, although I live in Lisbon, and it's amazing how different things can be. I think that it's very important, at least is what we try to do here, it's to qualify very well and understand very well someone that comes to Portugal. What does he want? What does he like to do? What is he expecting from this country? Because for sure, it's not going to be equal to the origin one. But there are a lot of things to do, and very pleasant also. It's also important to understand if one comes to work, to retire, to invest, because these are different situations, different environments, and different paths to reach the final goal. We also consider very important if one wants to live in a flat or in a house or near the beach or in the country. I mean, all of these things are key factors for helping to build the idea and the expectation that a mover has when he arrives in Portugal. Because as Colin said, 1 year after, we got to be sure that we did very well our homework so that one doesn't get tired or bored from having nothing to do because all the excitement and the fuzz, they're already gone. So I think it's very important to work on this side, which is something that often people don't do, okay? And we got to advise well, it's not everybody has to be in Cascais or in Chiado or in the middle of Lisbon, etc. There are plenty of fabulous places 1 hour from here, or even less, where you can have a better quality of life and cheaper. So let's say it all goes with the goal that someone has.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pedro. Paul, just finally.
Yeah, I mean, I said it at the beginning of this. You know, start from what you want to achieve and work back, and it pretty well it's that. But I mean, the one thing is, you know, you hear so many people say, "Well, I'm coming to retire." Who really comes to retire? You still want to live your life, and you still want to experience life, and you're coming to a new culture. And one thing I would say is, you know, integrate. You know, do things with different people from different social backgrounds, from different sort of life backgrounds, and actually you'll get a much richer experience if you do.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Pedro, let's say that you've found the right location, but how do you decide the sort of style of the property in a new country and manage some of the regulatory rules around real estate ownership?
Yeah, as I was telling, it's important to understand what the client or the person wants. Where does he want to live in terms of physical terms and the quality of the property that he has. After that, as probably Colin will also agree with me, we have to be well aware of the legal diligence that is need to do, because sometimes the areas don't match the plans. The plans don't match what's in the city hall. So these kind of things, I think it's very important to have someone to advise you, whoever he is. Because if you start with the wrong foot, you can be in a huge problem, and that's not the expectation. So I think it's important to be well advised. Don't go into a rush. Don't jump head straight on it. because we got to be well aware that sometimes real estate in Portugal, although the general quality is quite good, but when you are going to, trying to refurbish something or buying something old to build new, you got to be very careful in this situation. If you are going for a new building or a new development, generally you don't find this kind of problems. So it's a smooth landing until the deed.
Great. Thank you, Pedro. Paul, anything to add to that particular point?
Well, I mean, one of the things just to touch on, we talked about new build. There's also some changes going on in terms of, obviously, and this is not just happening in Portugal, it's happening around the world, where people have rental properties with Airbnb, and some people are coming, to live, but they're also coming to still travel. So sometimes they might want to do Airbnb, and you just, again, you need to get the right advice, because there has been some changes in terms of legislation, and if you're doing it for investment reasons, touristic developments, can be better if you're doing it for investment than say, just a pure investment in a non-touristic development.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And finally, Colleen, just so we wrap up this particular subject, your thoughts on that?
Well, with everything with real estate, it's also investment consideration. And when we talk with folks, it's the location you're considering. You can get some great deals. You'll see them online. You'll be sucked in by the pictures, but the location is going to be a huge part of your consideration. It goes back to our earlier conversation about location, but also investment. You don't know what's going to happen next year, next week, tomorrow. And so when you're investing abroad, it's important to consider, how quickly could I turn around and sell this property if the worst happened, if I needed to make a change. There's some amazing opportunities in the Alentejo and the beautiful parts of the country that I absolutely love to visit. But those properties you could end up holding on to for years trying to sell them. Whereas there's other areas that have a lot of a very different market and have a different turnaround. You've got to take that into account when relocating and purchasing property. Is what is the location, what's that investment, and what if something happened and you needed to move quickly?
Absolutely, very good point. Thank you, everybody. I just want to move on and quickly touch on language and education for expats. So I'm going to ask the panel, what's the education system like in Portugal, and how available are international schools that support expats and children? Or should you try and integrate your children outside of an international school to sort of fully immerse them in the country and in the culture? Colleen, I'm going to start with you on that one.
That is a loaded question. I tell you,
isn't it?
It's a loaded question because every child is so different. I wouldn't use the word should in regards to sending your children to school. There are, however, a lot more international school options than there used to be. There's more coming up available across the country. I live in Alcobaça on the Silver Coast, and we now have multiple school choices: international, private schools with English curriculum, and public schools that have now become accustomed to having foreign children with Portuguese as a second language integrated into the schools. But that's not the case everywhere. It's very much depends on the population, the shifting, the moving. Lisbon, Porto, Coimbra, the Algarve, they're pretty traditional on having international school options, but they come at a cost. And if folks aren't putting that into the budget when they're considering relocating, that has to be part of the conversation. It is not an inexpensive way to educate your child when you live abroad. So it's really an individual choice, but I've been really pleased in the last years to see the increase in engagement with Portuguese as a second language programs, of having tutors available, and then a lot of these private schools that are now offering some English curriculum as well. So I think that's an individual choice, and you should definitely work with folks that can guide you to the communities that will have not only the schools, but those extracurricular activities as well, because you don't want to just rip your kids out of the things that bring them joy and that they love doing. You want to find that balance for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Pedro, anything to add on that?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, and I agree with Colleen once again. And in the first steps, you got to understand with the family what exactly they will want for their children. meaning that you have schools that have IB, so they can continue their studies in London or in the US or wherever they want to go, or wherever parents are planning to happen in the future. But it's also a fact that Portugal has already some of the best universities in Europe, and I dare to say in the world, in some specific areas, okay? This is not like US or UK and so on, where you have state-of-the-art universities. But we are starting to be very well positioned, let's say, and well ranked, and even recognized by the other countries. That helps the fact that we have foreign teachers also coming to Portugal to live and of course to work, and they teach in the Portuguese universities. But I would say that it depends on what one wants for their children. If he's planning to stay in Portugal and would like the kids to be here, I would say that a national school will be good. If they want to give them a little bit of world as soon as possible, I would say that they should go for one that has an IB program that allows them to jump wherever they want to be, and they can always get back.
Yeah.
That's right, absolutely. Thank you both. I want to sort of touch on a few more sort of general questions before we move on to our Q&A section of today's webinar. Sorry, excuse me. For home maintenance, renovations, or sort of small repairs, what's the best way for expats to find, that trustworthy tradesperson? Also, what happens when you're away? Who will be looking after the property? Let those tradespeople in. Are there specific recommendations for vetting local services? There's a lot of questions there, but I just wondered if the panelists could sort of share their thoughts on that sort of subject. Again, Clean, I'm going to start with you.
I knew you were going to do that. That was a lot of questions.
There's a lot in there, yeah. See if you remember.
So that's what we do as a relocation specialist. We do relocation packages from sorting to settling. So we help you find the property, but we also manage these very projects all over the country. So I was in Viana do Castelo last week, and I'll be in Cascais tomorrow, and so on and so forth. It's not an easy process. It is just like it is. And for my American viewers, it is just like it is in the US. You know how hard it is to get a contractor to stay on schedule and return your phone calls? It's the same thing. You just have the language barrier involved in there. Every builder, every provider is busy right now. If they're of quality, they're going to be busy. So you're going to want to vet. You're going to look, if you are not working with a company like myself or other services, you really want to make sure you get multiple bids. Ask them for references to see the work they've done. And I hope I don't offend our Portuguese panelists here, Pedro, I'm going to say something here. There's the Portuguese yes, it's like the Portuguese yes, which means no. And it took me a little while to get used to it. There's the, yes, I will be there on Thursday at 8 o'clock and I will come with a crew. And then there's, yes, that'll be fine. I will take care of that. And then you never hear from them again. So it's a very interesting cultural difference from very direct people with Americans who are like, that. And then there's this idea that they don't want to offend you. Maybe they can't take on the business. They want to say yes. And that's, for me, one of the biggest challenges and what we had to get used to working in understanding the nuances of the commitments to working on the project. But the good news is they're great people as well here, just like anywhere else. You also have to be aware there can be some bad actors, but it's getting the information, being patient, having a realistic schedule, and not trying to force the Portuguese to work into a schedule that you have built from an American lens or from a foreign lens. Let them explain to you how it's going to work and work around that schedule, because you cannot force it. It will happen, but it's going to happen according to the way it works here in Portugal. And that's from a type A's real first learning experience. So I hope I didn't offend you, Pedro. It's just, wow, there's a lot of moving parts with handyman and construction here in Portugal.
Absolutely. Thank you, Colleen. That was well answered. I put you on the spot there a little bit. I'll leave you alone for 5 minutes. Okay. Paul, for those interested in setting up a business, so we're going to move tact a little bit, or moving their work, so could you outline the main steps in getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there are lots of different solutions, and providers, accountants, tax lawyers, many people you can go to. There are now some sort of fintech type solutions where, like Rava's solution, where you can go and do it online and download an app, and within 48 hours you can, and they can, it's similar to like QuickBooks and technology that people are used to, but very compliant to Portugal. But it's it's like going to any country and starting up a business. The process of setting that will be slightly different, but as long as you've got good advisors around you, it's not something you need to be frightened of, and it can be done relatively quickly. But it is, and there are, a lot of good incentives out there to start up a business in Portugal. The old NHR tax regime was very much more aligned to passive income and money that was offshore or retirees. But, it's now moving towards, encouraging more talent and more entrepreneurs and more endeavor. So I think you're going to see a lot more incentives and a lot more encouragement for bringing, talent and also young talent for that matter. The country wants to retain its own talent because, too much in the past had gone abroad and then not come back. And there's a big play to, offer zero tax for people under 35 up to a certain level, and to encourage them to come back. And that's not just to people that are from Portugal or left Portugal, but that also implies to talent that wants to come to the country and take advantage of its, sunshine and sardines and working environment, which, is very vibrant nowadays.
So obviously with that in mind, I'm presuming it's really important to secure reliable professional advice when investing or structuring your income or, setting up a business for a successful relocation. Is that something you would concur?
Yeah, I mean, I think this sort of goes back to the point Colleen made earlier about when we first sort of started onboarding people to different lawyers, financial people, tax advisors, visa and immigration. You'd have two different types of people. You'd have people that say, like Colleen said, yes, 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 and then they wouldn't get back to you, and you didn't understand why. And then you have others that stand up and they continue to stand up. And you do need people that have been through this. Like, we see hundreds of people, and through Portugal Pathways, we've seen all of that. And that doesn't mean to say that these people are bad actors, but they're just culturally, they're not responding necessarily in the manner that the other culture is used to. So, but money has no patience for anything less than good service and a good solution and good response. So, I think Portugal is raising its bar and standards, but definitely, come to partners that have checked these these professional advisors, because it's not just their advice, it's also being timely and professional.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. I also want to just talk to the panel about having a rich experience in Portugal and immersing yourself in the Portuguese life and culture. Paul, again, I want to sort of come back and start with you, as I know that the Portugal Investment Owners Club, or P Club for short, is very much aligned to this principle. Perhaps you would like to give us a bit more information about the P Club.
Yeah, I mean, this came up, we have roughly 50,000 people now coming on our website each month. And at any one time, we've got about 10,000 people that are actively engaged with, either one foot in Portugal, one foot out, actively engaged with actually moving there, or they've moved there, but they didn't necessarily plan in it, and they're working steps back to put right some of the things they didn't do at the start. We've done a load of research with those people and surveys which we will be sharing with people in our annual report next month. But the big thing is that they are coming here for experiences. That if they want to invest, they want to reach people that are like-minded and share experiences and opportunities. And also, they want to see the diversity and richness of the country. I mean, Pedro and I have had conversations before about some of the hidden gems that he knows, because he's born and bred, and he'll tell you places in the Alentejo that probably nobody has ever heard of, that are World Heritage sites, for instance. So it's about exploring the culture and also meeting people. So that's very much what we're trying to do with our Portugal Investment Owners Club that we're launching next year.
So obviously, clearly, the P Club itself is an exciting development, especially for investors and expats wanting to enjoy money can't buy experiences, and obviously to invest in a secure and a highly tax efficient way that supports obviously Portugal's future. Colleen and Pedro, perhaps you could give your thoughts on the principle of community and obviously being stronger by the sum of our parts. Whether that's an established Portuguese family or new residents sort of bringing value creation and wealth, as well as contributing to Portuguese society. So, Pedro, as you'll sit next to Paul, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Paul was saying, and I'd have to say more. Knowing, or from my experience, there is a lot to see in the country, although it's a small country, and there are some really still true experiences to live, and that this segment of people really enjoys a lot usually. Also, after they come to Portugal, or after they spend some time in Portugal every year, there is this feeling of I could do something else. I could help more, I could contribute more, etc. And people start to look for some investments that probably are available. They don't know how to do it. They don't know exactly what to do. They are also waiting for someone to whistle them. Okay, this is a good deal. We have opportunities here or there. You got to be well aware of where are you putting your feet, of course. But I would say that this is natural for one that comes to Portugal, enjoys the country. But after a while, this is not just excellent weather, good food, wine, quality of life, insurance, safety, etc. But at some point, they will find, or they will feel, okay, I'm a bit bored. How can this be a little bit more challenging, let's say? And that at that point, they start thinking on something, let's say, I wouldn't say professional, but where they can invest and where they can apply sometimes the experience that they have accumulated through life, or that they can bring from abroad.
Excellent. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Pedro. Colleen, just wrapping up, is there anything that you want to add on that?
Just community is everything for our folks, the people we bring over. That's what we focus on first, is connections. Anywhere you go, if you aren't able to make a true connection and to understand where you're living, it's going to feel hollow. And Portugal has the ability to welcome you, to open their arms to you. And if you just take a moment and breathe and try and just step forward, you will be really, really pleased with the response. It's a beautiful country that way. And it's something that I feel very humbled and very honored to be even a small part of, and I still have so much to learn. It's incredible that way here.
Brilliant, thank you. Just Paul, just going back to the P Club and thinking about the collective buying power. Will membership also give people access to sort of healthcare insurance? Obviously, we talk about healthcare today across Europe and worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, as part of the Portugal Investment Owners Club, there will be an opportunity. So you'll have like a P Club card, and that will have benefits on it, and people can add, because again, if you're buying insurance, if we're in a community with people with means, then obviously those insurance companies will give benefits and reduce premiums if you're part of that community. So we will have that option. But there are also some other fabulous options. I mean, Pedro's got a phenomenal solution here that he offers to his families, and I'm sure Colleen has got similarly. So I think all of the people on this group can guide anyone in the direction that best fits for them.
Excellent. Well, thank you. That's great. I've just noticed that we're getting lots of questions in the chat about, you mentioned it before, Paul, but the NHR 2.0 tax regime, and that obviously the Portuguese government plans to sort of...
That's a $1 million question.
Yeah.
That is $1 million question. I'll give that $1 million question to Paul.
Thank you for that, Steve. Yeah. So, there's a saying: don't believe what you read in the media. Now, this is a media guy talking as well. So, don't believe everything you read in the media. Now, this time last year, the government, in their wisdom, announced giving people a 6-week notice period that they were ending NHR.
I can correct to lack of wisdom.
Lack of wisdom. Ending NHR to new entrants at the end of that year. So, our inbox, and I'm sure Colleen's and others, it just all blew up. And then people were randomly putting stuff in the media. Half of it was made up and rumor. And I see a few chat questions in here saying, I've heard this, and then rumor.
Yes.
The reality is, until something gets put into law, it's not fact. Now, so all that's being put forward now, there is hope that this week there might be some clarity, but obviously you have to bear in mind, about the mandate that the government have in terms of lack of a majority, and being squeezed on both the left and the right as to what they can or can't do. I think the intention is to make it more friendly to people bringing productivity. So that's entrepreneurs, that's young people with talent, professionals with talent. I think the days of passive benefit from pensions is probably going to end in this new NHR 2.0. But there'll be lots of other benefits, linked to capital gains, linked to professional income. But I don't want to get too subjective with it, because we'll end up climbing over a fence that will spark more rumor. Now, if anybody wants a call or meeting with any of our team, we can discuss what those things will look like. And as the minute they are finalized, then we will be going out to all our communities and explaining it in detail on how it means. But it will be mean different things for different people. We had an NHR webinar about a couple of months ago, and people just tell me what it means to me. Tell me what it means to me. And some were getting very frustrated because we couldn't answer them, because we don't know their inside leg measurement or the nuances of their income and assets fine enough. And that's why you have to get up close and personal, and you have to engage. And they've got to tell you what they're trying to achieve again, and then work it back from there. Because NHR isn't a panacea. A lot of Americans are still going to get, on the American side, are still going to get taxed. And I know there's a lot of panic out there from Americans that have moved, that, somehow they're going to get really penalized under this new administration, and somehow all of their assets are going to be frozen. And we're hearing it. There's a little bit of panic creeping in. But I would say, talk to people that understand. We've got people that can help you. At least know what your options are, so that you can make an informed decision rather than a panicked one.
Absolutely, Paul. Thank you. I'm really conscious of the time. Obviously, we're going to try and keep it as close as we can to the hour mark, and we're approaching that already. The Q&A and the chat has sort of lit up. So I'm going to move on to the Q&A. But I just want to reiterate, if we don't get to all of the questions today, which quite clearly we won't, because there are dozens, our team will reach out to you obviously within the next 48 hours, either to answer the questions or invite you to meet with one of our experts. So we have a question here from Patrick. Patrick is asking, what support or advice can you give us around setting up essentials like utilities, internet, and other services? So, Colleen, can you take this one for me, please?
Sure. So it's pretty straightforward. Services like ours, for example, do all of that work within the relocation packages that we offer to make it streamlined. You will need to have certain documentation set up, for the utilities is usually done through a power of attorney, a remote power of attorney that is limited to getting it set up for you. And it can all be done pretty swiftly. And then things like internet packages, communication packages can be delayed until right before you arrive. So it's a staged process. If it's a new build, a new construction that you purchased, then that could be a little bit more complicated, as there's some other steps to coming off of construction energy and moving into your individual. But all of that can be managed pretty straightforward. When you do work with relocation companies, that's of course what we do, and a lot of services that are out there are going to help you navigate it. If you're doing it individually, just be prepared for the fact that you're going to need to be able to navigate the Portuguese. Most of the municipal water companies, most of those folks are not going to have documents in English. And a lot of times they're still using like PDFs and things. They don't have portals that are quite as up to date and easy to translate. So if you do navigate it on your own, give yourself some time and prepare for some delays and perhaps having to refile documents, because especially the water companies are a little slower depending on what part of the country you're looking at. It really varies. Urban areas to more rural areas can be completely different in how the process goes.
Thank you. We have a question from Olivia, and she is asking, I want to live close enough to Lisbon, but I don't want to be in the thick of it. I'm looking for a modern contemporary property, but very much want to be part of an authentic Portuguese life, and keeping my relations with other international entrepreneurs and like-minded expats who are not quite ready to completely retire. Long question. Paul, I'm going to ask you to give some thought and answer that one, please.
Well, the problem it's another big question. Without knowing, obviously we understand a little bit from that in terms of, entrepreneur and that they want to. Portugal Investment Owners Club might be able to help them, but the reality of it is, it comes back to the life. What life do they want to lead? What kind of people do they want to interact with? And pretty well everybody on this panel could help them on that journey. But it's sitting down with people and really being open and honest, and not trying to do, as I said at the beginning, just be task driven. Get on calls, meet people face to face if you can. But basically, you need to engage with people that walk this walk with many people before, and then you can still make your informed decision, which may be not what you've heard.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Pedro, I've got a question here for you. This is Andrew, and he's asking directly, Pedro, we are a wealthy family considering coming to Portugal from the UK, and my wife has suffered in the last 6 months with poor health. We want to live in Lisbon or the Algarve, where there is access, to first-class healthcare. What would you recommend? Another big question.
Well, I can use the expression of Paul just some seconds ago and say that, well, it depends on the life that you want to have. But with that kind of condition, I would say that somewhere in Lisbon or in the surroundings, because Portugal is a small country, okay, so big hospitals or efficient hospitals are not so spread along the territory as they should. And in terms of that condition, definitely I would go for Lisbon or in the surroundings. But very important, you have outstanding places like 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers from Lisbon, meaning half an hour driving distance, and you can have an excellent quality of life also.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pedro. We've got a lot of questions in the chat, but I'm really conscious of the time. It's valuable to obviously the audience and obviously our panelists. So I'm going to wrap up and just say that obviously the questions that we haven't managed to get to today, the Portugal Pathways team will be reaching out to you and answering those questions. Or as I can see, some of those questions, you would benefit from a call with one of our sort of partners, one of our experts, to help you advance and move down the path to relocating to Portugal. So as I said, we will reach out to you. Before we go, I'd like to just go around the room and really just get a summary, just a sort of like a final point, if you like, from each of our panelists, just as a takeaway. So Paul, I'm going to start with you. What would your takeaway and the 1 point be for the audience today?
Don't spend your whole life online trying to find all the answers to the universe, because you'll get a headache and you'll probably get lost in it. Don't spend all your time searching on property portals, again losing half of your life, being disappointed at the end of it. Talk to people that have walked this walk and that have gone and made some of these mistakes and challenges, and hear what other people have had to do. Because you spend too much time online, you do become very reactive to everything you hear. A bit like politics, really.
Thank you, Paul. Pedro?
Yeah, I dare to say that you should consider this triangle that goes with safety, life quality, and environment, and take your decision as if you are going to live here for long, okay? Because that will demand that you think, that you talk with other people, that you talk even with some of your friend or not that is already living in Portugal. It's always important to understand the experiences that one has, that one comes from abroad. I should say that the advice of those who live here, professionals like me or Colleen, etc., it is important. It will save you time and money for sure, but you are not obliged to, of course. So there are a lot of ways to reach out to the final goal. Don't spend so much time online, because there are tons of fake information and of misunderstandings, etc., etc. And most of all, be sure of one thing: we are Latins here in Portugal, and as Latins, we are not so as Colin was saying, but we are friendly and we can help you during the journey.
Excellent, thank you. And finally, Colleen, what your sort of takeaway?
Well, everything that has been said is so on point. The piece that I like to remind everyone that I work with is you need to be planning a move abroad as if you are planning for a marriage, not the wedding. Everybody focuses so much on the things that are going to happen in the next couple of months without any regard for the long-term impact. And if you can get yourself turned around and really think from the impact of, why am I moving? If you're running from something, that thing you're running from will come with you. It is not perfect here in Portugal. The grass isn't greener. It isn't that kind of thing. You're not going to just all of a sudden land here and everything's perfection. It is a choice you make to change your lifestyle, and it will come with fantastic things and it'll come with frustrations. And if you're not prepared for that, you won't be able to really immerse yourself in the community, the beauty of the area, or any of the things we've talked about. So really dig down and look at why you want to move, what's motivating you, and move towards something and not from something.
Wise words. Thank you, Colleen. So it just leaves me to say, we hope that you found today's session valuable. For further guidance on your specific questions, obviously, please reach out to us at Portugal Pathways. We look forward to supporting you in any life decisions, including real estate research, health insurance, joining communities, investment and tax planning, or even setting up a business in Portugal. Our experts and partners and panelists are on hand to guide you, so please contact us at Portugal Pathways, or obviously via the link that the team have put in the chat, and we can facilitate arranging a discovery call to answer all your questions. Thank you again for your time, and please register for our next webinar, our last webinar of 2024, which is entitled Portugal's Future, which is on the 10th of December at 4 p.m. Lisbon time. We will look at 2024 and the forecast and development for Portugal's economic investment future as we head into 2025. We'll also look at the sectors of industry, including luxury real estate, golden visa, residency by investment, and the international trends in terms of inward investment into Portugal. Paul, I know that you have a few slides that you would like to share with us on the topic for this next month's webinar. I'm just going to quickly put those on the screen so that you can talk to those. Bear with me 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I know because we've run over, so I'm only going to touch on this for a minute or so because, you know, it's a prelude to the next webinar. But there are some big things that are happening, and I think, you know, they're important to share. You know, I've fallen in love with this country. Pedro's from this country, and Colleen, you know, so we may be biased, but the stats that are out there, they don't lie. You know, Portugal's property market, you know, is outperforming other international markets. North America, Europe are all seeing, and the UK all seeing declines, and Portugal is still seeing growth, and that's a testament to the money that's coming into the country. You know, there are challenges there because part of that's because they're not building enough. But, you know, there are plans, and hopefully if this government can, you know, get a handle on that, you know, we'll see some changes in that, and they're doing some stuff or planning to do some stuff to support young people to getting on the ladder. I think there's a long journey on that. But, you know, the property market, 5.8% expected growth next year. So if you're investing in property, or you're just living here, you can feel good about it, compared with, you know, a decline. Sorry, you're going too fast, Steve. A decline in other international markets. And there are pockets around the country, you know, Silver Coast, Central Algarve, some of the areas around it, Lisbon. You haven't always got to go to the most expensive centre to get the value and the future growth. Often it's around the edges, and again, all of the people on this call could support you and guide you on that journey, depending where you are. And then finally, the economic indicators. Portugal, probably for the first time, and Pedro probably probably tell me more on this, but I think for the first time, it can't be many times in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years that Portugal is outperforming the Eurozone and the UK, and forecast to continue to do that, and getting Fitch reports saying that it's confident and growing, and A ratings. Ernst & Young did a piece of research a month ago saying that confidence in investing and setting up businesses in Portugal is at an all-time high. Confidence in Europe is 67%, Portugal 77%, and UK much lower than that. It's got a faster growing GDP than Europe and the UK, and its inflation is decreasing faster than those locations, already from a low cost of living base. So please come on our end of year webinar, and we will be able to share some of this, and you'll be able to understand more about what the opportunities are going into 25 and beyond.
Thank you, Paul. And just leaves me to say thank you to our audience for your time today. We hope that you found this invaluable. Please reach out to Portugal Pathways if you want to touch base with any of our panelists or you want to discuss anything further. And a big thank you to Colleen, Paul and Pedro for their time. We appreciate it. Until obviously next time in December, the webinar that Paul's just discussed, we shall see you then. Thank you very much for your time.